It's Monday here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We've got Ray Fittipaldo. We're going to recap what we learned and what we saw at Steelers rookie camp. A lot of talk about Troy Fautanu and where he's going to line up, but also the Steelers get answers at cornerback position. They got a new cornerback we'll sign. We'll talk about him and who might be the favorites to start at slot cornerback as we continue the offseason. And more Paul Skenes talk. How did he do? How did the Pirates do this weekend? Noah Hiles will be on the show as well. It'll be a fun episode. Let's get into it. You are now listening to the North Shore Drive podcast, a show on all things Pittsburgh sports from the writers of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, hosted by Christopher Carter. Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Ray Fittipaldo, one of our great Steelers beat writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where you can read all of our content at post-gazette.com. Find us here on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of the Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast and the daily content that comes out from all of our Pittsburgh Post-Gazette writers. As always, this show is brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you go to Mike's Beer Bar, they have over 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are from the local Pittsburgh area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap. It's an amazing place to go. More on them later. Ray, we got through rookie camp, and I always love this time of year simply because of how the fans react to seeing a little bit of things. I put like a little 8-second video on Twitter of just Roman Wilson runs a route with Zach Azani, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, look at that! Look at his footwork!" And I'm like, "We don't. Hey, just don't calm down." But that's how thirsty fans are for football.
Wait till the schedule comes out on Wednesday night. People are going to be going even crazier, and OTAs the next week. So yeah, I mean, give them their football fix, Chris. That's what the Steelers fans want.
It's such a thing, and I think the biggest thing that everyone was wondering about in rookie camp was where Troy Fautanu would line up. Not that there's a whole offensive line even in rookie camp, by the way, but they wanted to see where he lined up. And as we talked about, we reported in our reporting from being there, he was practicing to be on the right side in these rookie camp practices. I wanted to give a chance for people to kind of listen to it. We had clips from Troy Fautanu talking. I want y'all to hear him talk about it. And then we're going to give you our spiel and just how we're seeing this play out. Here's Troy Fautanu when he was at the Steelers facility after the first day of rookie camp practices.
They've got a returning starter at left tackle, and last year's first round pick Broderick played a lot of left tackle. Did you kind of know, once you processed being drafted by them, did you kind of know, like, all right, right tackle might be where they're going to have me at?
For me, it was whatever position it was, man. I don't want to beat a dead horse,
yeah.
But whatever positions, is the coaches want me to play, I'm going to play. And whether that's whatever my role is come season time, or for me, I'm just trying to focus on what we have today, and that's just coming out here and trying to gel with my teammates and make sure that I earn their trust.
I know it was a dream for you to even come on a pre-draft visit here. We asked you a ton of questions about growing up rooting for the Steelers. I mean, how surreal is it just to have that on your chest today? Maybe it's only a practice jersey,
but looking down and seeing different colors is for sure something new. But I wouldn't want to wear any other colors.
So first of all, shout out to Brian Bacco for getting us the video there. But Ray, I think that was the correct political answer. Like, I don't care where I play. I'm just looking to help the team. That's what the rookie's supposed to say. But to me, it does seem at least the Steelers, they want him to be good on the right side. If he's not, they'll adjust to it after the fact. They drafted him because they knew, like, hey, this kid can be good to great in the NFL. But at least to me, it does seem like the Steelers want their ideal situation to be Troy Fautanu starts at right tackle, Broderick Jones moves to left tackle, and then that's how everything's set up. How locked in do you think that plan is, or is this more of a malleable thing that they'll just go through and see what happens?
I mean, nothing is ever locked in, Chris. I mean, I'm sure, the Steelers and every other NFL team spend millions upon millions of dollars on the pre-draft process, right? I mean, going back to scouting games first in September, all throughout the fall, and then every stop along the way on the postseason journey, Senior Bowl, Combine. I mean, there's just a ton that goes into it. I am quite sure the Steelers had a pretty good idea that Troy Fautanu can play right tackle in the NFL. Now, having said that, he's got to go out and do it, Chris.
Right.
I mean, he didn't do it a lot in college. I think the vast majority of his starts came at left tackle. I know he had some time at guard, but I even think his time at guard was even on the left side. So even though they believe in Fautanu as the athlete, they think he can do it, he's still got to go out there and do it. And, we were just privy to basically walkthroughs over the weekend. We'll have a much better idea in July at training camp if this is going to work out. Even OTAs next week, it's not – you're not really putting the pads on, Chris. So, again, I'm sure he'll be on the right side. They wanted to expose him to that because that is their plan. But to your point, they do have to be malleable if it doesn't work out for whatever reason. And the good part of it for the Steelers is they know Broderick Jones can play on the right side. They want to move him to the left side, but we got to make sure that Fautanu is comfortable and can do the job on the right side before that happens.
And more to your point, let us not forget that this is purely rookie camp. This is not only football in shorts, it's linemen in shorts. Like these guys, they can't hit, they can't fight for leverage right now. I think that the big thing here that you're looking at here is they just want to say, hey, how's your footwork? How are you understanding things? Like one of the fun things I kind of paid attention to on the second day of practices was I watched Payton Wilson and him just talk to Aaron Curry, and all they were doing was like, hey, here's the trash cans that line up which gaps are which gaps. When I say this, where do you look? Where do you go? And it's all just kind of the baseline of figuring out that foundation for each position group. When we want you to do this, like when we talk to Roman Wilson, and we'll get to him later in the week because I wanted to focus on Fautanu to start here. But like Roman Wilson's talking like, hey, all I'm doing right now is working on getting lower because I'm coming too high up my stance, pumping my arms, doing the basics. That's what this is about. And for Fautanu to flip to right tackle, he has to work on the basics, and that's what they're focusing on. But I do think it's important to note the Steelers want to put him over there, but they're not resigned to have to put him over there. If it turns out Broderick Jones, I mean, again, I keep bringing this up. The Steelers went from being one of the worst rushing offenses to the second best rushing offense when Broderick Jones became a starter at right tackle last year. And I also did some extra research, and I saw in yards before contact in the first 9 games of the season, they ranked dead last in the NFL, showing that the offensive line was creating not enough space for Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. But in the last 9 games of the season, or the last, the second half of the season, they were ranked 8th in yards before contact. So showing, again, when Broderick Jones came in, it made a big difference. Yeah. If they come in and they say, you know what, Broderick's just crushing people on the right side, and maybe Troy Fautanu is not as suited to that, but he can do pass protection, they'll flip it up. But I think the goal is like, look, Broderick Jones has the full body length. He has the prototype build for left tackle. Fautanu's got the prototype build for being a mobile run blocker on the right side. That's what we'll go with for now. But again, they're not locked into it.
Yeah, absolutely not. And they shouldn't be, Chris. I mean, the entire idea of these rookie mini camps, and they're going to get 4 weeks of OTAs and mini camps. It's really just to introduce things to the rookies and to the younger players who are vying for roster spots. The veterans show up out of obligation because Mike Tomlin wants them there. But for anyone who hasn't, ever been to one or even read about it, there are, let's say there's 100 snaps of practice. First, second, third year guys are getting 90% of those reps. Okay. Yep. Like the veterans who are there, they're going through the stretching and stuff, but they're giving way to the younger guys who are maybe going to be on this team a year or two from now, or have a role on this team, I should say, a year or two from now. So, people should just keep that in mind. I will say one thing about, where people lined up over the weekend. You did have Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, and Troy Fautanu lined up on one side, on the right side. Very well could be if James Daniels doesn't re-sign, and I don't think he will. If Mason McCormick works out, that could be your line for the 2025 season. So it is interesting in that way, just to kind of get a peek into the future of what they're maybe thinking. But obviously, Fautanu has to make it work this year, and Mason McCormick has to show out and show that he could possibly be that guy next year as well.
Absolutely, and we'll keep an eye on that here as OTA start next week. So this week things kind of slow down for a bit, we can kind of all take a breather. But next week is when we'll see OTAs. So then we'll see these rookies mixed with some of the veterans that come in, and we'll see maybe a better look at just how things are working at, again, football in shorts, but still an early look at how things are going to be heading into the rest of the summer. Well, I want to talk about the cornerback position. The Steelers added a cornerback in free agency. We want to talk about him and how the slot cornerback looks, because there was also a player at rookie camp who might be in consideration there to play slot corner for the Steelers. All that here and more on the North Shore Drive podcast on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Ray Fittipaldo. But first, we'll remind you the show is also brought to you by Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. When you go to Mike's Beer Bar, they have over 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are from the local Pittsburgh area, because we have so many great craft breweries here. And then 80 of those local beers are available on tap, and they're always switching new ones in and out to always get you a new experience every single time you go. They also have over 20 televisions. They have outdoor seating right across the street from PNC Park. It's a great place to go before, during, after Pirates games, or just when you're out in the North Shore. It's an amazing place. They have amazing food like Steak on a Stone, where you get your choice cut of steak brought to you on a heated stone. Every time you cut off a piece and you press it into the stone, you choose how well done you want every single bite. It's Mike's Beer Bar, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. So go there today, and when you get there, tell them Chris sent you. Back here on the North Shore Drive podcast for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. Ray, you wrote a story about Beanie Bishop, the undrafted free agent cornerback out of West Virginia, who looks like he might have a good shot at being the Steelers slot cornerback. What did you learn from talking to him?
I learned a couple of things. He's really well-versed on Steelers history, and I asked him, because he started bringing up names like Mike Hilton and James Harrison, undrafted free agents who made the team in the past. And I was like, did you just learn about this in the last couple of days, or are you like a true football guy? He was like, no, I've been watching the Steelers. I know who Mike Hilton is. So it kind of fits. He's like a 5'9", scrappy little guy who's going to play in the slot. And as we all know, Chris, the Steelers right now do not have a slot corner. So I think this is a perfect opportunity for Beanie Bishop, not only over the weekend, but obviously OTAs, minicamp, go out there. Maybe he gets on their radar. Maybe he says, oh boy, 24 years old, maybe this guy can help us this year. And even if it doesn't work out, Chris, maybe he's a practice squad guy, or maybe he's a depth guy this year. And maybe, the Cam Sutton news or the Patrick Peterson news is going to come down the road. But like we talked about last segment, this is a perfect time and place for the Steelers to find out about some of these young guys like Beanie Bishop. And, the one thing about him in West Virginia, very productive. I think he had 4 picks in his one season with the Mountaineers, led the nation in pass breakups. A little bit of a down year when he transferred from Western Kentucky, where he spent his first 4 years to Minnesota. But, that season at West Virginia was really impressive. I think the only thing that kept him from being drafted was his stature, 5'9", a little bit on the light side. But, we've seen plenty of undrafted free agents come in and make an impact in the NFL. I mean, I use this stat every year. I used it in my story on Friday. Like 1/3 of the league, Chris, is made up of undrafted players. And there's a reason for that. Guys get overlooked, but also there's a financial aspect of that where it's good business-wise for teams to keep those guys over guys who have a little bit more tenure. So it happens every year. We'll see if Bishop is the guy this year, but without a doubt, Steelers, every other team in the NFL, 1 or 2 undrafted free agents are going to make that 53-man roster, and we'll see if Beanie is one of those guys this year.
To your point, talking about him being up there in the country, he had, according to Pro Football Focus, he had 14 passes broken up. That's the same amount as Quinyon Mitchell, who was the top cornerback. It was also one more than Terrion Arnold. Those are the 2 top cornerbacks that were drafted this year. So, like you said, on-ball production was there. But like you're talking about, part of the thing that gets held back, everyone wants corners to be taller, to be longer, to be able to do that. He's 5'9", and that's not ideal. But he also ran a 4.39. That's like, so when that's the one thing about Mike Hilton wasn't super fast. Like, Mike Hilton was quick. He was smart. He got in the right places. He was physical. He did all the right things there. If Beanie Bishop can bring a Mike Hilton type of attitude with with a 4.39 speed and that kind of ball production, that can be very useful to the Steelers, especially at the slot cornerback position, which is why I also think the Steelers aren't being too aggressive about trying to sign major names at cornerback. They're like not going out and paying big money for somebody or trying to trade for somebody that's going to play. They want to see what they have here in the camp, though they did add somebody, and that's Anthony Averett in free agency. But again, not an expensive player, not a player that they're expecting to, take over. If he ends up starting great, Anthony Averett, a guy who was pretty fast coming out of college with a 4.36 40-yard dash time out of Alabama. But this is a guy who has been in the NFL since 2018. He's going to be 29 years old this year. He was injured 30 years old this year. He was injured all of last season. And the last time that he was in the NFL, by the way, he was not playing slot corner. And in a year where he played about 270-ish snaps, 242 of them went to lining up at outside corner. So to me, this is just another depth option. Maybe he works out on special teams, Ray, but this is another example of, hey, the Steelers are just seeing what they have here without having to make too big of an investment. And if they find starters here, great. That means you don't got to worry about it in training camp. You don't need to make trades. You don't need to make a big splash in a signing somewhere. But this is kind of setting up your foundation for what do you have already on your roster.
Yeah, listen, Chris, to be honest with you, the Steelers secondary needs much more than just a starting slot corner. I mean, their depth, both inside and outside, isn't very good right now.
Right.
I did not to re-sign James Pierre. Say what you want about James Pierre. I know he hasn't done much with the defense the last couple of years, but he was a good special teams player, and he was like your number 4, number 5 corner. They need one of those guys too. So maybe Everett, if the injuries have subsided, maybe he's James Pierre this year, and that's okay. That's a value
useful
on the 53-man roster. So, that's what that is. And just going back to, the slot corner thing with Beanie Bishop, don't expect him. If it happens, great. But do you remember how long it took Mike Hilton to get his foothold in the NFL? I mean, he was with New England first. He was cut. He was signed by the Steelers like in November. He was on the practice squad. And it wasn't until the next spring, Chris, where he actually played really, really well, and he knocked Willie Gay out of a starting job.
Mm-hmm.
He was the guy. So, it takes time, with undrafted free agents sometime. And people think of Mike Hilton, great player for the Steelers in his role, signed that nice little contract with the Bengals, been a really good player, but it took him time to make his way in the NFL. So it would be great if Bishop could do that this year. He is an older player. Maybe it does happen, but sometimes the road for those undrafted free agent guys is a little bit longer than it is for draft picks.
Agreed. It's not a linear thing. Like, it's not like everyone does the same thing. Because you know what? Some undrafted guys, come on right away. Some guys, just hit and they get a starting job and they do a great job holding on to that position. But when you compare it to a Mike Hilton, and it's the same thing. Beanie Bishop brought up James Harrison. James Harrison was almost not in the league. He bounced around between teams for years before he caught on, and the Steelers were like, "Oh, wait a minute, that guy's pretty evil. Let's put him somewhere." So Beanie Bishop, it doesn't mean he's going to come out and start right away, but it's at least a projection to be like, hey, you know what? This could work out. Another undrafted guy who's on the team right now, Jalen Warren. When we talked to Eddie Falk, the running back coach, he was like, hey, Faulkner was like, this guy, this is a guy that we put him in our top 10 running backs of this class, but we just didn't need to draft a running back. So when he was there as an undrafted, we're like, oh, we'll go get that guy. And now there's no pressure on him to have to be the man right now, but that's a guy that you love to have on your team. And Steelers are very happy to have Jalen Warren. I think that's kind of where Beanie Bishop is if he works out, great. If not, depth guy. And
what's the common trait there? Lack of size, right? Jalen Warren, 5'8". I don't even know if Jalen Warren's 5'8". He's a little bowling ball. He's just made of muscle, but he's not one of these guys who's 6'2", 230 pounds, and is going to be a guy who stands out among the scouts. So it happens all the time. It happens from high school to college. You got guys who are walk-ons who earn scholarships. Same thing happens in the NFL. You're not drafted, undrafted free agent. You could still make it, but like I said, sometimes it just takes a little bit more time.
Also, you are right. Jaylen Warren is 5'8". So to your point, size does matter. But again, it's all about, hey, when you get the opportunity, what do you do with it? We'll see if Beanie Bishop impresses like he did at West Virginia. It'll be certainly exciting to watch. We'll have a lot more angles to cover here on the Steelers as we get ready for OTAs to start up next week. Also, the schedule drops Wednesday night, so we'll be talking about that there. But the Steelers weren't the only big news in town. We also saw Paul Skenes get his first start. The Pirates were able to win that game, albeit in a crazy fashion. Noah Hiles was there for it all. I'll talk to him in a minute here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter. Thank you, Ray, for joining us. We'll be back with Noah in just a minute. We're back here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We switched topic to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and to do that, we got my buddy Noah Hiles, who covers the Pirates for us here at the Post-Gazette. Noah, it was an insane Saturday between the crazy weather and the crazy game, but all eyes were all on Paul Skenes. He comes out of the game, 4 innings pitched. He did have 7 strikeouts, had 2 walks, 3 earned runs, though, how those were technically earned runs, we will get to shortly. But I want to get your impression of how he performed in his first start. What did you like and not like about what Skenes did?
I thought based off of the circumstances, I thought he was pretty good. I would give it, if I had to give it a letter grade, I'd give it maybe like a B-. The efficiency was a problem, and he admitted that. I mean, he threw 40 pitches in the first 2 innings. And when you're a guy who's only going to be allowed to throw slightly north of 80 pitches, that limits how far you're going to be able to go into a ball game. But I mean, how do you not love the stuff, right? His first pitch as a major leaguer was 101 miles an hour. He entering that game, the most 100 plus mile per hour pitches thrown in the first 2 innings of a baseball game this season was 8, which ironically enough was done by Jared Jones. Man. Skenes doubled that total. He threw 16 pitches that registered for triple digits in his first 2 innings as a pro. That's incredible. I mean, the 7 strikeouts in 4 innings is very impressive. Against the Cubs lineup, it's not a joke. I mean, they're a first place team. Yeah. So there was a lot to like. Obviously, yeah, he didn't go very deep. Could he have gone another couple of innings? Absolutely. But we know the deal with this. This is going to be the way it works with Paul. They're not going to let him throw 100 pitches after he had only gone 6 complete innings once as a pro. His highest pitch count as a pro heading into his MLB debut was just 75. So this guy's not even completely stretched out yet. I think we will get to see him reach 90 to 100 pitches at some point this season. But his buildup is still continuing. It was just at a point where he was so dominant in AAA, they said it's better just to have him up in the major leagues right now. So it was pretty good. Obviously not great, but slightly beneath great. It was, like I said, pretty good.
I saw on Codified Baseball, they tweeted this out during the game. Of the fastest 8 pitches ever thrown by a Pirate starter, Paul Skenes now has 6 of the fastest 8, and the other 2 are Garrett Cole. Like, that's insane that, the Pirates have had all those. I know it's just tracked fastest pitches and there's tough stuff there, but to me, that's just wild.
Yeah, that was that stat became a thing in the first inning too, Chris. That's what's crazy about it. And that data goes back to 2008 when they started tracking all of that. But yes, I mean, so you're looking at what, 16 years? Something like that. And he needed 1 inning to throw 5 of the 6 fastest pitches any Pirates pitcher has thrown since 2008 in just 1 inning. So, I mean, the velocity's there. To me, though, and this, I'm not the only person who had to take away. Like, we knew this guy could throw heat. He's thrown 104 of the 105 fastest pitches in minor league baseball this year. Like, we knew the velocity was there. To me, the intrigue is with this pitch that he kind of invented himself. It's called the splinker. It is a sinker split finger combination, a unique grip. And again, like, he kind of just made this up on his own, and it serves as his secondary fastball, where you see guys who typically will go with the 4-seamer, 2-seamer. or a four-seamer and a cutter or a four-seamer and a splitter. He kind of just combined a two-seamer with a split finger, and the movement on it is disgusting. And it still comes in at around 95, 96 miles an hour, which is a typical velocity for most big league starters. And if that's like a secondary fastball with movement paired with a 100 mile per hour four-seamer, and then obviously he's got a change up, a curve, and a slider. I mean, there's the stuff it's legit.
It sounds like it. Just everything. It sounded like it looked like it. I was watching the game. I was just like, that dude. That's ridiculous. But again, rookie making his first start. There's going to be polishing needed to be done there. What also needs to be done here is how the Pirates played around it. It was so funny hearing you guys talk about just the weather of the day. It was pouring down rain until Paul Skenes stepped out onto the field and started warming up. And then as soon as the Pirates pulled him, tornado hits the city. like it was just, and then the Pirates played terribly. Noah, how the heck did they blow a 6-1 lead that quickly just before they had to call the game for weather for a rain delay?
I don't want to take credit for this because Andrew Destin, our coworker, is the one who kind of labeled it this way, and I totally agree with them. Kyle Nicholas is the perfect embodiment of modern day pitching because he has electric stuff. He can throw the ball very hard and he can make it break crazy width and vertically or whatever. But he's not pitching right now. He's throwing. And sometimes that results in strikeouts, like he did the first two batters he faced. He got outs against the 3 and 4 hitters in the Cubs lineup. But then he hits a batter to load the bases, and then the control goes out the window. 12 straight balls, 13 if you include the hit batter, hit by pitch. And I mean, these were nowhere near the strike zone. The guy couldn't put it over the plate to save his life. And it was tough to watch. I've never seen anything like that. And it continued after. I mean, Kyle and Nicholas put them in the spot, right? Because they had originally been warming up Nicholas and Luis Ortiz. They went with Nicholas. They sat Ortiz down. Nicholas comes in, gets 2 outs. They're like, okay, we're fine. And then hits a batter, walks 3, runs in. And you're like, all right, well, we got to get someone up now. They had a mound visit after the hit batter, but with those 3 walks, they didn't do anything to kind of slow down the game and buy time. So Josh Fleming comes in with a rushed warm-up, knowing that a rain delay is about to occur, and he's not ready to go. So he walks another guy. Then they allow an infield single, and it's a tie ball game. And then the rain comes down, and it was just a mess. And then it continued afterward with Colin Holderman, who starts his outing with the bases loaded after a 2-hour rain delay. Like that's a no-win situation there. And it's kind of like, where when something's on your mind, you're like, I can't do this. Well, now it's like, oh God, now I have to do it, like that, like, don't touch the stove. Don't touch the stove. And it's like, now I kind of really want to touch the stove or, and that was the situation they found themselves in. It was, I think I saw since 1959, that was the last time a team walked 6 runs in a single inning. So it was quite impressive in a bad way. And it was something where if they didn't win that game, that's a disaster. I mean, it's something you can maybe laugh about now or whatever, but like if they blew A, a 5-run lead, and B, Paul Skenes' first big league start, that's something that you're gonna never live down, really. And while you're looking out for Skenes, I mean, if you keep him in there, I know he allowed 2 hits to start the frame. He probably gets you out of there with the lead still, right? And probably under 100 pitches. I know he was at 84, but I think he could figure it out still. But yeah, it was the ugliest baseball I've ever covered.
Well, the Pirates aren't in a great position right now. They're 18-23, third in NL Central right now. They won that game 10-9. They did pull it out in the end. Then they lost in extra innings the following day 5-4. Noah, they're 1-4 in their last 5 games. But at least in their last 4 games, they have scored 4 or more runs 3 of those 4 games. It seems to me like timely hitting is as much of a problem as just hitting period for this team. Do you see anyone taking strides forward who could maybe help this team get out of the rut that it's been in?
Yeah, there are a couple of guys that I've noticed. I mean, O'Neal Cruz has been really good recently. He hit 3 home runs this homestand. I think he's 10 for 23 in his last 6 games. That includes 3 home runs, 3 doubles, 7 runs batted in. I mean, the dude's barreling the baseball. There, for all the concern that existed toward Cruz, people comparing him to Gregory Polanco after 1 month into the season. I had always been there saying, like, hey, let's just relax with this guy. Like, he's still very young. He has not played a full major league season, and he's just trying to get his timing going right now. And sure, you're still going to get games from him where he's going to go 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. But this homestand, we also saw the other side of things where when that swing connects, it will send the ball out pretty often. So that's good. I mean, Connor Joe's been very consistent. Another guy that I think is kind of going under the radar because his numbers still aren't amazing is Andrew McCutchen. He's reached base 7 straight games, and he has an OPS, I believe, over 750 as a leadoff hitter this year. And he's just a guy that's giving this team professional at-bats at the top of the order, and that's encouraging. I mean, he's not setting the world on fire like Cruz is right now. And like I said, Connor Joe's been a good hitter, not just for the Pirate standards, just in general, since the very beginning of the season. Those 3 guys are encouraging. The problems, however, Carter, are with the rest of the lineup, especially if you look, the free agents that they brought in have not performed. Rowdy Tellez, Michael A. Taylor, Aroldis Chapman. I mean, this is that what I just listed there. That's over, I believe, $15 million of signings that have not paid off. And I would argue, Chapman's been good and bad at times. But Taylor has had like a decent series against the Cubs. I know he had a home run. But I mean, overall, like, you're not getting your return on your investment there. And you pair that with not successful development with Sawinski and Davis and others, and an injured Ke'Bryan Hayes, and you've got a very ugly situation right now on the North Shore.
Certainly, the Pirates have a lot of work to do. They are now back on the road playing the Brewers Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday before they head to face Chicago for 4 straight games for the rest of the week. He is Noah Hiles. Noah, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone read Noah and Andrew's work covering the Pirates, as well as Ray Fittipaldo, Brian Batko, and Jerry Dulek's work covering the Steelers. Thanks so much for joining us here, Noah. Thanks to Ray for joining us here on the North Shore Drive podcast. And thank you all for joining us here by tuning in on your favorite podcasting apps or on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all our Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast, as well as all of the daily content from all of our great writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Also, thank you to Mike's Beer Bar for sponsoring the show. Back Wednesday, talking more things Pittsburgh sports right here on the North Shore Drive podcast. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all the sports coverage from the Post-Gazette that we have to offer, visit post-gazette.com.